It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Jen Cohen as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. As always, it's great to have you in studio with us today. We're sitting down with the Kaibab National Forest Fire Information Officer, Bob Blasi. Welcome to studio.
Thank you, Paul, for having me.
Good to have you down here. You'll hear Bob from time to time on our stories with Kaibab National Forest. And, you know, we try to keep track of the Kaibab, Coconino, and the Prescott National Forest, because I figure that's our group of people like to disperse into those different forests and stuff like that. So Bob came down today to give us kind of an update on how things went over the summer months in the Kaibab National Forest. We're also going to talk about some management fires that took place that caused some smoke in the Verde Valley this year, just a couple weeks back. And then we'll also talk a little bit further about the fall and maybe winter burning cycle, and then whatever else we happen to throw in there at the time. So let's go back over the fall and winter were dry in the Kaibab just like it was anywhere else this year.
Yes, as a matter of fact, it was actually the driest we've seen in the last 25 years.
Okay.
Between July last year and October.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad everywhere this last year. I mean, everybody knows that we started wildfire PSAs and started talking wildfire back in, I think, February. February is when we started, and it continued all the way through June into July, and then the monsoon hit. The monsoon had been really good for everybody. Was the monsoon as good? I don't think people realize, and I ask you this question, was the monsoon good on the Kaibab National Forest? Because it's very hit and miss. But did you guys pick up a fair amount of moisture on the Kaibab?
We did, and there were sporadic rainstorms that came in that were heavy in different areas. And overall, it looked very good compared to the summer that we were just coming off. But due to the annual precipitation rate, we're still only at about 80% total of our average for the year.
Okay.
So it was still enough to take the punch out of the fire season that we were looking at. And overall, it turned out to be not as bad as we anticipated.
We got lucky this year.
Luck had something to do with it, but
Right.
we also took a lot of extra measures this year in order to try to prevent and thwart off a catastrophic event. And what that entailed was closing down the Bill Williams Mountain watershed area, going into stage 1 and then stage 2 restrictions earlier than usual. And as a result of that, we got less fires to occur, and we also got more compliance from the public. A lot of it had to do with partnering also with all the other agencies in our area, like Coconino County and the state of Arizona. And everybody collectively got together and decided we'll take proactive measures this year to get this done, and it actually worked. It was quite successful.
It did. I think it's probably going to be a kind of a role model for years in the future when we have these kind of drought conditions happening again. Weather Service is saying right now we're expecting a normal to above normal winter. Are you hearing that for the Kaibab as well? You know?
Yeah, we heard normal, as opposed to last year was probably a lot less.
Well below normal, yeah.
But you know, even when we set up and predict and try to prepare for the worst situations, oftentimes we're fooled every time. One thing I've learned in my 20 years working with the Forest Service and watching weather daily is that even when you think you're going to be facing a bad fire season, it appears we get lucky. But in fact, you know, it's very difficult to decide what might burn and what won't on a given year. A few years back, like 2010, we had a record snowfall, and yet fires that following year were excessive, and there were a lot of very large fires with a lot of acres burned. So we didn't see that coming as well. So
right, I do remember that.
Being prepared is the main thing, though. We're always trying to be prepared, and this year we were prepared, and we got good results.
So tell me about some of the big fires that we saw during the summer months on the Kaibab National Forest. What were some of the big ones?
So I think the two largest were up on the North Kaibab, the Cat and Steina fires. Cat's just below 5,000 acres. That's still actually active right now, and the Steina was about 2,800 acres. Those are both lightning ignited, and they were both allowed to burn naturally as we do in order to benefit forest health. The large one up in Tucson was called the Rain Fire, and that one landed just south of the town of Tucson. And this was a piece of ground that we've been working on slowly over the last several years with prescribed fire. And it's a difficult piece because smoke from prescribed fire usually channeled right into Tucson, and it was one that we could not really burn rapidly or large because of the amount of smoke. So we were just whittling away at that particular unit. When lightning landed in there this year, it was an opportunity to wrap up about a 600-acre parcel right south of town that would have inevitably put weeks and possibly months of smoke in town. So in 1 week's time, that 600 acres was completely wrapped up and finished, and it saved extended days of smoke in town. And it was really a tough piece of ground to get burnt. So when lightning went in there and it was favorable to allow it to move, we let it do that, and we came out very good. The effects were great. And we've spared the community of Tucson and the visitors of Grand Canyon quite a bit of smoke in the future.
It's like ripping off a Band-Aid, huh? Because I saw that a couple times this year. I want to say Coconino National Forest, the platypus and rhino fires just northwest of Sedona in the Secret Mountain Wilderness area. They had been burning forever and forever and forever, but they were down this bottomless canyon. They just could not get down in there, and you can't put firefighters in there. It's just not a safe thing to do. Well, it finally burned up on the rim, and they were going to do prescribed burning for an entire week, but it took, I don't know how many acres it was, but they did it all in like 2 days over a weekend. And I mean, the smoke was awful, but after that was over, the smoke was pretty much gone. Up until that point, there had been a lot of smoke every day. So same thing on the Kaibab National Forest. It's like when Mother Nature steps in, it's like, okay, do your thing and get it taken care of, and you deal with smoke for a few days, and then it's over, which is nice.
Yeah, it can be unpleasant, the amount of smoke that people are experiencing, but ultimately the goal here is to limit the number of days that people have to experience it. So it works, although, you know, it does have its risks involved with health issues and such, and so we have specialists that we bring in order to monitor these situations very closely.
ADEQ?
ADEQ was with us this last week when we were burning up on the south end of the Williams District, and we also had 2 air resource advisors that we brought in, and they're specialists that can actually detect all the science of smoke and how it is in the atmosphere and the health risks associated with it. And they can create products for us that we can better understand and then advise the public of the risks involved with the smoke. But
they give you the yay or nay on burning too. Is that right, ADEQ?
Yes, we have to put in a request each time we do a burn, and we have to wait for their approval on each one.
Okay.
And they often look at how many people across the state are burning at once and determine how much smoke is allowable in the atmosphere at any given time. So it's a very controlled, well-monitored situation, and we have to go with them every single day before we actually put fire on the ground.
I think that's a good point to make too, just so folks know that Bob Blasi doesn't get to go out and just drop a match and say, okay, we're going to burn this today. It doesn't work that way. ADEQ comes in. I think sometimes there's test burns to see how the smoke is doing, and then ADEQ does monitoring, and they say, okay, you can do it or you can't do it, but ADEQ is in there. And something else I'd like to clear up too, when Mother Nature sends down a bolt of lightning and ignites a fire, there's the choice of either suppression or non-suppression. I think, and tell me if I'm right or wrong about this, and jump in. Suppression occurs if there's any danger to archaeological sites, human life, human property. But if it's out in the middle of nowhere and Mother Nature's the one that started that fire, then we can let it burn up to natural boundaries and so on and so forth. If Paul David's out there and I start a fire, we can't let that one burn.
That's correct.
Okay.
Human-caused fires are not a natural event, and they are required that we suppress them.
Okay.
Now, when lightning hits the ground, if the fire is behaving in a manner that's beneficial to the forest, then it can be considered to be allowed to move around naturally. But there's a lot of considerations. Obviously, like you mentioned, protection of heritage resources, other resources at risk that could involve infrastructure for communities, neighborhoods, developed areas, highways, power lines, and so on. So if any of these things are at risk, then we have to take alternative actions. And oftentimes with one of these fires that we allow to burn, we'll take both different strategies. We'll suppress over here while it's threatening a particular resource, and we might allow it to go over in a different direction. So it's a way we can use fire as a tool to continue to meet the objective of restoration in the forest. And it works very well. But it is restricted to certain parameters, and we have to follow the guidelines when we do that.
Okay, let's take our first break. Kaibab National Forest Fire Information Officer Bob Blasi in studio today. Stick around, countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
How I define making? In the broadest possible terms, it is making something extant in the world that didn't exist. Everybody who's ever made anything is bringing something into fruition for a reason, and that act in and of itself makes us stewards of our culture. It's something that we're talking about. It's a response. Actually, it's telling a story. That's really what it is. And I include everything that could be made: painting, sculpture, welding, all of that.
Yellow is positive.
When a kid gets their hands on the world and learns that they can make their fantasy play, that they can make their reality, that's power. And as far as I'm concerned, everyone should feel that kind of power. There we go. If there's something that interests you to bring into the world, that's fantastic. Go figure out how to do it. Go tell your own story. There it is. And so I want to know why you make. Let's go.
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyimake.org.
150 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Welcome back to Countywide. Fire Information Officer Bob Blasi with the Kaibab National Forest is in studio today. To get to their website, I just Google Kaibab National Forest. Takes me right to it. Abandoned campfires. You were awarded 2 years in a row for not having a wildfire caused by an abandoned campfire in the Kaibab National Forest. That is like unheard of.
Yeah,
Is it not?
It was. It was 2 years consecutively. It was back in 2015 and 16. It was in Tucson, and I was very proactive with it. But the community there was relatively small. It's about 144 acres, the whole community itself, the developed area. And although there are 5 to 6 million visitors a year coming right through there to Grand Canyon, the same campsites right around the community are the ones they always sit in and go to every night. So I was able to identify about 75 to 100 campfire rings and hit them like a paper out every morning, get up early and go to every one of them and catch them while they were still in the rings. So technically speaking, we still had over 300 abandoned campfires that year. Even though none of them escaped, they were not considered wildfires by statistical measure. And eventually, I thought after the first year it was worthy of notation, but after the second year I began to wonder just how it was done. I can't take credit alone for it, though. There's a large group of people that work in Tucson that were proactive with the whole thing, and mostly fuels reduction that went on up there. And part of the reason these fires didn't escape was because we had treated much of the area in the urban interface around the community. So there was nothing really for the fire to carry through after we got prescribed fire and treatments done all around the town of Tucson. So a proactive approach with patrol and enforcement, and then a proactive approach with fuels reduction and prescribed burning, and that's how we did it. And there was a whole crew of people up there that participated. I was the lucky one who took the award, but I took it on behalf of the whole crew at Tucson.
That's neat. That's neat.
Yeah.
And I think we're hearing that on every forest. I hear Pete Gordon say the same thing, where we've got the communities with the fire breaks that are being put in. Even grants are being developed to put those fire breaks in. Thinning, burning. We've got lumber companies coming in. I guess that's the thinning. Brush crushing. All that stuff has been going on, and it's been going pretty well over the last, I don't know, God, maybe a decade, 10 years, you think?
Right.
About 10 years. We've been really on the ball with it and getting the job done. So we were talking before the show, and I feel like where we're going with this is that, those of us who live here now are kind of going through the aches and pains of catching up with so many years of not working on the forest, not doing burns, not doing brush crushing, and just let the forest take care of itself, basically, and it's gotten overgrown. So now over the last decade or so, we've been going in and doing a lot of cleanup work, and we're kind of at the, I don't know how much more we have, but I feel like once we get past this and we've got these nice defensible spaces around the communities, and we've gone through the forest and we've thinned them and we've done our initial prescribed burning, although it's really a lot of it going on right now, eventually someday it's going to go much faster and be less expensive.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Inevitably it will. There's still plenty of places that aren't as easy to use fire, like at Tucson is relatively flat. It was a, I will say, user-friendly area to use fire and get things treated and cleaned up. In the steeper country, obviously, like the Mogollon Rim and up in Bill Williams Mountain and around the San Francisco Peaks, it's a lot more difficult to do. And there's a lot of fuel loading on the sides of these mountains that are up in steep slopes that make it very difficult to get treatments in there. And so inevitably we're working towards that. And they've been at it probably more like 20 or 30 years, but this is all part of the restoration effort and what the whole entire Forest Restoration Initiative is about, is trying to accelerate the pace of restoration on all the ponderosa pine forests across northern Arizona.
We got kind of tired of seeing those big 400,000 acre fires and 150,000, 200,000, 300,000 acre fires. There was a lot of years we had big ones like that. You know, it's...
And the cost associated with them is pretty expensive.
Astronomical.
And that's what's led us to do more prescribed fire now. And we've been given higher targets each year by the highest agency department head in Washington to increase our targets. And so that's a little bit about what you experienced here this past week when smoke came down into Verde Valley. Is we're going after bigger acres with prescribed fire because it's a lot less expensive to do it this way than wait for a wildfire and spend enormous amounts of the budget doing it that way. So,
and we're going to see that for a while, as you mentioned. Washington wants us to start doing this.
That is
and
correct.
Really get in there.
And almost everybody supports it. I don't think it's a partisan thing at all. I think everybody supports the idea that fuels reduction is the best prevention we can start using. So,
yeah. So with that, we'll kind of roll right into my next question for you. We've already started to see some of it, and we're going to keep seeing it. I noticed this last week, the press release changed from prescribed burning to possibly pile burning, and I think it was Kaibab that was.
Yeah, that was my press release.
Yeah, it was your press release that I saw. So we're kind of in that stage. So what do we've got planned for the kind of fall winter months now?
Well, we have 4 projects big on the south zone. That's everything south of the South Rim, Tucson and Williams. There's the Russell and the Reed projects up in Tucson, and then there's the Green Base project and the Sunflower project, which is what we were working on last week. We burned about 6,200 acres of that in a 4 or 5 day period last week, and unfortunately some of that smoke went over the rim and down into the Verde Valley. So we still have another 4,000 or 5,000 acres to do there, and then we're going to move over northwest side of Williams and burn another 7,500 acres there. The reason we moved to piles was because of the moisture, and it's just to continue to work towards target. Piles will burn even in the snow and the rain because of the way they're arranged and the way they stand up. It's not hard to get them to consume. They also don't produce very much smoke at all. So it's in the interim while the wet weather is here, and it's starting to pull back now. So we're waiting for it to dry out again before we can begin or re-engage in some of these broadcast burns. So.
But it's going to be a part of our lives. It's going to be a big part of our lives for quite some time. So we'll take our next break. Kaibab National Forest Fire Information Officer Bob Blasi in studio today. Stick around. Countywide back in just a couple minutes.
It appears these hot ashes are about to be dumped, which could possibly start a wildfire. How will Smokey deal with such a hot situation? The garden hose defense. Next, a thorough stir. Then another spray. And finally, feeling if the ashes are cool.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yes, the selfie. A ritual practiced so frequently with this tribe, but not so much by Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Being prepared is a part of who you are. But it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
Welcome back to Countywide. We've got just a few minutes left in the program. Kaibab National Forest Fire Information Officer Bob Blasi in studio with us today. Every time one of you guys come in from Kaibab, I want to know how the Bill Williams Mountain Project's coming along, because that's a big piece of the Forest Fire Project, but it's also pretty detrimental to Williams as well as their watershed. So how's that one moving forward?
Right. That is a priority area for us. And we are now in the process of partnering up with Coconino County, the City of Williams, the National Forest Foundation, and a lot of Native American tribes to get some action and some movement on some of the treatments. Our biggest challenge obviously is going to be the steep slopes, and in that being that there's only very few contractors that have the capability and equipment to go up there and literally remove the material from those slopes off the hill. And it's a very challenging thing. I mean, we can't just send people up there with saws and think they can skid them out to roads and pull it down. So we are now working with and have contacted some of these specialty contractors. Most of them are up in the Pacific Northwest. And although they are engaged at this moment, they know we're headed this way and that we're going to need their services at some point. And it's looking promising. I will say this. I've been a member of the implementation team here on the Bill Williams implementation of the restoration of that mountain, and I can tell you we have some committed people at our district that are on this team, and particularly our fuels program manager Mike Ubel, who has been on it since its inception about 8 years ago, and he's a local guy. He was born and raised in Williams, and he has a very committed interest and personal commitment to seeing this project through. And we're on the precipice of some good things, and I don't want to say too much other than I think we'll see some pretty good proactive work beginning in the next year or two, and we're going to actually start making it. Meanwhile, we've been treating all kinds of things at the base of the mountain where it's a little easier to work, and these are areas where campers are usually going, and we can at least beef up patrols and remove debris and get treatments down at the bottom.
Sure.
So it's coming along, and it's about to come along even faster, I think, and you can watch for it. When we start seeing that work, we'll be putting out news releases and letting folks know exactly what's going on. But this partnership is really what's going to make it happen, the collaborative effort between all these people. And so
the cost. Holy cow, the
it's
cost.
Expensive.
We're talking about helicopters and stuff.
Right, a lot of the work, but it's only about 2,600 acres up on the steep slope that we'll need the helicopter operation for.
Okay.
But you can imagine the cost per acre to do that kind of work is 4 or 5 times what it would normally be for other areas to do. So the costs are a challenge. There's no question about it. But we do have some irons in the fire about finding funds to get this work done, and we have a very wide group of people at the district as well as at the county and with the National Forest Foundation and Native American tribes that are all pitching in to see how we can make this happen. And I see it happening probably before I leave the agency in a few years, but it's promising. I can tell you that. It's promising where we're going with this. So.
Fantastic. So I guess the message today is be prepared for some more fall burning, prescribed burning. Pile burning as well. If the weather is not going to let you prescribe burn, then there's going to be pile burning going on. That's going to continue throughout the winter months. And then we'll see, hopefully, if we get a good winter, maybe spring and summer won't be quite so bad. So, Bob, it was great to meet you face to face.
My pleasure, sir.
Thank you so much for coming in. That is going to be today's Countywide. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.